This is Raging with Ron and Riccardo. Ron is the good-looking gentleman with no hair. I'm the bloke with all the hair. And our guest today is Joanna Walden, the author of the book, The Inside Hustle, which is right here. Joanna, welcome to Raging with Ron and Riccardo. How you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Sorry, you're our first New Zealand guest. Did you know that?
No, I love it.
Yeah. Well, we've had an Iraqi guest who was an immigrant to New Zealand, but you're the first born and bred Kiwi that we've had. Everybody else has been out of the US, so you're unique.
I love it. I love being
and
unique.
we're going global.
Perfect for me. Perfect.
It's all about going global. Now, Joanna, your book, The Inside Hustle, we should really start at the beginning. I mean, we do want people to buy this thing, so we're not going to give away all the secrets. But we should start at the beginning, because where you are in life now and what you're doing is very different to what you were doing in New York when 9/11 happened. So should we go back to there? Because that's really where everything starts in the book, isn't it?
It is indeed, yeah. You know, I studied advertising and marketing at uni, and then I landed a job in New York through some connections, and I arrived there like a few months before that happened. I think I arrived in April sometime, and it wasn't long after that. Obviously, it was September 11th, and I was 22, so I was quite naive and green, you know. But I didn't know what to do at school, you know, and I grew up around advertising, and so I ended up doing that, and I did have you know, that's where my career started, I guess, but it wasn't because I'd specifically desired to do advertising, I guess. And, you know, I just ended up there because I just didn't really know what else to do, but I didn't want to do nothing at all. But, you know, 9/11 obviously is really significant, and everybody just remembers exactly where they were, you know, when they found out about it, and that whole thing happening. And you know, it was a lot to deal with for someone who's quite green from New Zealand, who's 22, who's just arrived there. So, and my office was on 51st and Madison, so it wasn't right down in the action. And my apartment was on 15th Street and 8th Avenue. So equally, that was just above the cutoff for where things were getting completely evacuated from. So, but it was a really, really intense experience that, I mean, I really went inward, and that's pretty natural for me anyway, but I just went inward and I started having an experience of myself in relation to everything that was going on that was pretty different from everybody else. And I, you know, was writing things down, which has now ended up in my book. But I really was just experiencing this connection to an expanded view or a higher perspective on everything. And I didn't really understand why I wasn't feeling the same things as other people, or why I wasn't so caught up in the hysteria of it. And it was almost not like I was disconnected from it, but I was really viewing it from a completely different lens. And, you know, the practices that I did during that time was a lot of meditating and writing, and just observing what was going on around me in the thick of this absolute chaos and madness and horror. You know, I mean, you know, I had people who had you know, their husbands or wives were working in the World Trade Center, and when they came into the office when I found out about it. So it was pretty awful and horrifying. And I remember going out onto Madison Avenue and seeing a massive sea of people just running from downtown, and, you know, and then after that, obviously all the tanks and stuff rolling through the streets and the F-15s flying over. I mean, I'll never forget all that. It's just something that you just don't forget. But throughout that absorbing of the experience, I definitely connected with this more eternal perspective on a deeper level that I was always carrying, but it just wasn't at the forefront of my experience until then.
Right. Yeah. Where were you for 9/11, Ron?
I was at 51st between 5th and 6th in Manhattan. So I shared it with you, obviously, you know, in live and in color, unfortunately. But, you know, it's interesting. You had said that you had a very different view of it. I don't know. I don't know how it affected everyone, but I know how it affected me. And I felt this overwhelming sense of patriotism, this overwhelming sense of you know, anger, quite frankly. There was lots of ignorance on the front end of it, right? We didn't really know what had happened, what was happening. You know, you didn't have cell phone communication. Our airspace had been shut down. You couldn't get through any of the tunnels in Manhattan. You couldn't move around. So on the day, you know, I watched it unfold on TV. I had a TV in my office and I watched it unfold. And I wonder if your experience may have been that, you know, you were new to the United States, you had showed up here and maybe it wasn't quite as personal. I took it quite personal that day, as I think a lot of people did, when it happened. And then the aftermath of it, and you probably remember this, you would walk the streets or Penn Station or Grand Central and people would come up to me with, you know, a picture of one of their loved ones and say, have you seen this person? Tell me you've seen them. And it went on for quite a long period of time, weeks and what seemed like months, but certainly for a long period of time. And that was really haunting to me, where it was like, you know, persons were holding out hope for, you know, some ray of hope that their loved one had survived. And it was really, really a dark time, I think, for me at least.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you guys both witnessed it firsthand. I was asleep and got woken up by my then ex-wife. We had her mum and her sister staying with us, and all I heard was from the lounge was she'd got called, so she went running up, and they were watching this thing on TV. And I, at that point, was still half asleep, didn't know what was going on. Walked down the hallway, looked at the TV, and thought, my first thought was, why are they watching Die Hard at 8 o'clock on a Thursday morning, whatever it was? That's what it looked like, you know. It didn't look real. I was just, and it took a while to sink in. And then, you know, next thing you know, 2 hours later, and you've just sat there. You haven't gone to work. You haven't done anything. You've just been like, what is going on? So, I mean, even back here, you know, a million miles away from where it happened, it had a massive impact. Not obviously the personal impact that it had on the both of you, but it certainly impacted around the world. And Joanna, I mean, that really was a trigger for you to change the lifestyle and get out of Madison Avenue and kind of do something a bit more real.
Yeah, I mean, I spent a long time working and living in New York after that, because it happened just when I arrived, but it very much in the background, it definitely unsettled the waters. And I was very much, even though I was, you know, in this crazy treadmill career in New York in advertising, which is just 24/7 basically, you know, I was constantly just aware that I wasn't feeling an incredibly deep level of satisfaction within my soul with what I was doing. It may have been ticking boxes of money and status and high flying career, flying around the world and producing amazing creative work, which was really fun. I mean, it ticked many boxes, but there was a box that wasn't ticking. And I think that just brought that part of me to the surface a bit more, so that I was constantly aware of that the whole time I was living that experience, until I decided to leave. And the whole point, I left there and went to London because I, you know, in my mind, I was constrained by a visa in New York with, you know, allowed me to do certain things within an agency. And I really wanted to move out of that. So I sort of moved to London and wanted to have that experience as well and give myself a bit more ability to expand. And so that's what I did. I sort of went off in pursuit of something. I wasn't sure what it was. And I decided to walk across the length of Spain on an ancient pilgrim path to try and help me figure it out. So that was the first port of call, you know, walking across Spain.
Yeah. Did you find any meaning in a jug of sangria? Because I imagine there were a couple of those on the way.
Well, so this is the funny thing, actually, Riccardo, is that I thought it was going to be this amazing spiritually enlightening experience. And, you know, I'd read this Shirley MacLaine book called The Camino, and she just had all these amazing, like, otherworldly experiences that I was just like, wow. But she said in this book that basically the path follows the ley lines of the Milky Way. So it follows the energy lines of the stars when you're walking it, and it can help shift and realign you. So I was like, well, I want to go and be zapped by this pilgrim path. But you know, and all my good intentions of wanting to go, and I went alone, and I went on this, you know, pilgrimage, and it literally was the comedy of errors, which is where this whole comedy of errors journey that I sort of am living in this book starts. You know, it was a booze cruise on legs. It really was. There was not a lot of, and every time I would like think I was going to have one moment of a spiritually sort of enlightening or something significant, then something would happen and it would just, you know, like, I mean, it was just crazy. So it would just never turned out what I thought it was going to be, basically.
So was it the 9/11 incident that caused you to just magnify some of the, maybe, if I'm saying it properly, voids that maybe you were looking to fill, or what was that? I mean, what was that triggering moment that you decided? Because all of us kind of go through that, I think, in our own way on our journey, and I'm just curious of that's a very young age to decide it.
I mean, I just had this inner feeling that I could be doing something that I was completely in love with, that was purposeful in the world. And I wanted to find out what it was. And I wanted to find my genius and my individual specific, well, I call it now like an individual divine blueprint. It's like we're all carrying this amazing genius within us that's, you know, usually covered up by all sorts of different societal programming, educational stuff, family upbringing, relation, you know, all that kind of, just what we've grown up in this world. And so you get distracted and you lose sight of really what is the most important thing to get you there, to get you to the most completely connected place within yourself, where you're going to be bringing all that online for yourself. So, you know, I was just on a voracious search, and I was searching outside of myself the whole time. And that, you know, that's the funny part about it, is that I was just always looking in the wrong areas. And I'd been told, you know, all the answers are within. That didn't mean anything to me then. I was like, well, I'm going to go do all these things to find it within. And then it just, you know, all of them obviously served a purpose, and all of them allowed me to understand different parts of myself along the way. But it wasn't, now I really understand the, you know, that's why I called it the inside hustle, because it really is about bringing that focus back to self. And that's, you know, now that when you can open up that and you understand that a bit more, then you can start tuning into it. And that's where the, you know, I developed this, this work that is the basis of all my client work, called heart technology. And it really, that whole journey took me there. And, you know, I guess I was always following my heart, because I was going off and doing all these madcap adventures in search of the answer for myself, and in search of me solving the problem to myself, because I knew there was all these things that were out of alignment. I just didn't really know how to figure them out or sort them out. And, you know, the heart technology fell out of that when I started getting more into alignment with what I was really most passionate about, which is this other world that we can't really, you know, see, but I know is there, that it's very impacting everything we do, because everything is energy. We're made of energy, and we're having an energy experience, whether it is, you know, whether we're under the illusion of the physical or not. So, you know, all of those things really did lead me down the path to finding some amazing genius, like, which I guess is where I'm going with this heart technology. And I'm just really scratching the surface of that. It's very, something that's very new, you know, that I'm working with. So I'm, yeah, just using it to help others.
Yeah. Can you explain to us, maybe in layman's terms, for me and Ron particularly, what heart technology is? I mean, you know, I hear heart technology and I think pacemaker, but it's not that at all, is it?
No. No. So obviously we've got our physical heart, but, you know, we've also got the energy centers within our body. I mean, it's all been scientifically proven, the chakras, the whole thing now. I mean, there's a lot of different energy centers that work in our body, and the heart is quite a big one of them. And I was inspired to look into this idea of heart technology, and I didn't know what it meant, to be totally honest with you. I had no clue when it was sort of, you know, shown to me that that's what I needed to start pursuing. And so it sent me off on another journey of exploration into what that exactly meant. And no one was really talking about anything aside from the heart chakra, or maybe the high heart chakra, that was very yogic based. But I then stumbled across the Institute of Heart Math, that do a lot of independently funded research into this nature of the heart. And they're really looking at the relationship, the physio-psychological relationship between the heart and the brain, and how that all operates together, and how that affects our physiology and our structure, and all of us energetically, physically, all of the different bits and pieces. And they talk about a key technique of theirs, which is heart coherence, which is bringing the brain into harmonizing it with the heart, essentially. Because, you know, we technically, I believe that, you know, our brain is supposed to be taking signals from the heart, not the other way around. And we've been taught in school that this is the mainframe, this is where it's at, this makes all the decisions for the whole body and everything that we do. And it's actually not true. So they've now found that in their research, the heart is sending more signals to the brain than the brain is sending to the heart. The brain's still sending signals, but far few. And the brain is taking its direction from the heart, not the other way around. And, you know, I started sort of playing around and exploring these ideas that were falling out of the research that they had started with. And I was sort of experimenting with the way I was using my heart energy. And, you know, a lot of people just think, you know, not only pacemaker, but, oh, you know, being heart-centered is all about warm fuzzies, and maybe it's just about compassion and kindness and, you know, love. And it's actually not at all. It's this quite incredible technology that is our connection to our individual divine blueprint. It's our connection to our connection to source or divine intelligence or nature or whatever you want to call it. There's so many different definitions that people align to these days, but it's essentially just this is really the mainframe that we're talking about, and it has these capabilities beyond what we have known and probably beyond what we know now. But some of the ones that I've found, the ways that you can work with it, is in purification and alchemy. It has a direct knowing of wisdom that is far stronger than anything that could come from our brain mind. The HeartMath actually did some research that showed that they were doing a study where participants were shown images that were going to provoke an emotional reaction with them. So maybe a positive one or a negative one. And as they were doing this study, they found that before the participants were even shown the photo, their heart was registering the emotional reaction that aligned with what they were going to be shown. And it was more ahead in time when it was a negative response than it was a positive response. So that was between 2.4 and 4.2, I think, or 4.6 seconds before they were shown the photo. So, you know, it's really interesting that it has this almost like prophetic wisdom that's carried within there. It knows what's happening. It knows on a level that our sensory abilities don't even know yet, you know, which is amazing. And so, yes, this idea of this heart wisdom and having a different knowing than we can in our human sensibility is really interesting. And then I also found, you know, that it is not only the purification and alchemy and this knowing, but and this connection to the divine source wisdom, but also this sort of visionary capability that it has. And when we really get into alignment with this heart technology within us, you can honestly use it in so many different kind of ways and shapes and forms. And I've just found it really, really effective with client work, because when it immediately brings you from here to here, which is super beneficial for everybody, because we just get tangled in here. And this doesn't actually know the deepest wisdom, really. It's taking its signals from here for a reason.
Right.
So does that give you a bit more of an idea about exactly what it is? It's looking at the energetic functioning of this whole area and what it has beyond just the physical capabilities. So yeah, it's pretty interesting and exciting, to be honest.
Yeah, really exciting. I mean, from your point of view, from how you grew up and things, how easy was that for you to accept when you first got introduced to it? Was that something that you were like, what is this? I mean, you know, does this come from way out here, or was it something that would align with things that you'd maybe been brought up with?
Well, I did grow up in with a mother who was quite spiritual. My dad was not at all. So that was always a bit of a battle. They butted heads on that kind of thing. He was very much, you know, the high successful business guy. And she was just on her own journey of evolution, exploring all sorts of different stuff. So I grew up in a household that, there was all of that stuff around. And I sort of thought it was natural to have experiences that you couldn't necessarily make sense of in reality, if that makes sense. And so I was already having very different experiences myself. I just didn't realize how not normal that was, I guess. So I was always I'm very open-minded in a way, because I did grow up in that environment, and I'd had experiences that encouraged me to be more of that personally. So yes, the answer to that, I think that was definitely weighing into it. And even when I was exploring the heart technology thing and I came across heart math, I was still sort of like, where is this even going and what is all this? But then, some quite prominent teachers in the personal development area, and, they started talking about using this heart coherence, using all this stuff. And I was like, oh, well, I'm on the right track then. These guys are way more ahead of the game, highly successful. And a lot of them are ex-scientists and things who are using all of this. And they're really now, it seems to be anchoring their work in it as well. So that was very encouraging to me to continue on with what I'm doing. So I developed a 6-part series on heart technology 101 kind of thing that I'm launching in the next few weeks online as a sort of do-it-yourself course. And I did a live version of it a fair few months ago. But I really do believe as a society, this is the direction we are moving. We're moving into, a focus on things that are better for everybody, not just the one person. They are, more sensitive to other things in life that are more important than just money and status. We're really in a huge transitory point on the planet right now. And so it makes sense to me that why I was sort of, it was emphasized to me that this heart technology is one of the most relevant and important things we can do for ourselves at this time. And, that was years ago, and now probably even more so before all the current world events. So, I think it's just, it seems to be on trend with a lot of things, so I have infinite confidence, and just the way that it's been working in my client work, incredibly visceral results. I take people from one state of being to another. It's like a completely different person. And I think it's really, really effective because I've had it the foundation of heart technology and everything I do in it. Yeah.
So through this journey, right, did you find more happiness, more contentment? Where are you at today?
Well, Ron, I must say, what I was searching for all of those years is definitely that deep fulfillment, the feeling that I'm in alignment and on path and so passionate about what I'm doing and helping people and how I'm showing up in the world. I'm meeting all of that at the moment, and I'm sure that will escalate as I continue on this journey, because this book has been only out for sort of 6 months or so. But when I hear people write into me, and I hear people call me and say, wow, Jo, this book has really helped me, and they feel the effects and results from it in their own life, then I just feel that incredibly deep sense of fulfillment within myself. And the same with my client work, in helping people, and the way that they, communicate back to me, the effect on them and their lives is amazing. And maybe I was really searching to be more of service, even not just to clients and advertising, but I do really feel so deeply fulfilled now, like I've never felt before. And that's really what I was after. I was just after that very significant feeling in the depths of myself. Yeah,
right. And I think that I'm a big proponent of people finding their purpose, right? And it sounds like that's exactly what you've done, is found that purpose. And when you get in harmony with that can be pretty magical.
Yeah. And, I was getting in my own way so much. And a lot of us do. It's just natural in the way that we have been brought up, and we grow up and we make our way in the world. And I had no idea the way I was disempowering myself. And then even some of the routes that I went down to explore all of this stuff in, holistic therapy, energy, consciousness, personal development, all of it, I really found that there were some things that were continuing to perpetuate certain things within me that were even more disempowering. And so I really wanted to help people avoid that for themselves, which is why I wrote the book, and yeah, so I think purpose is part of it, but then it's just really understanding how to get ourselves into alignment and knowing ourselves, and the relationship with ourselves is so key to everything else. It really reflects into everything that we're experiencing in our reality. And so when you can get that all into alignment, then you're in this amazing sweet spot where you get into alignment and flow and this beautiful grace of living where it's more effortless, it's not a battle, and it's not difficult, and everything is just coming to you because you have found that kind of that work within that has brought you to this place of tapping into your innate genius down there, you know? Yeah, it's usually just covered with all our self-created stuff. But it's in there. It's already in there.
I was going to say, Ron's innate genius is everywhere. So
first time I've been accused, I'll tell you that.
It feels, you know, you kind of touched on it before, but going from that Madison Avenue advertising marketing kind of career, which feels a bit cold in a way, you know, it's a very cut and thrust and a bit ruthless, to doing what you're doing now, which feels almost nurturing. Was that always something that you had in you that you recognized, or was it something that was a discovery along with everything else?
It's a good question. I mean, I wouldn't have ever really called myself nurturing, but yeah, it's an interesting point. Because I mean, I am actually, but I think certain experiences maybe led me to believe that I wasn't. And so I wasn't really tapping into that side of myself, you know? It's just the same as the conditioning that we end up going through in just the circumstances and the experiences that we draw to us to help us to awaken to these parts of ourselves that we're not looking at or not understanding, you know? So it was part of my journey of evolution for sure, to come more in line with that. And, you know, I think advertising, you know, it's very much relationships, and so that there was that part of it there that was very important. And I really used my intuition a huge amount I was in client service, and you have to anticipate with people, whether it's creatives or clients or whatever in the process, you know, when things need to be mapped out a little bit more clearly, or maybe that you know that there's a miscommunication, you can foresee it coming. And I really actually used a lot of my extrasensory abilities in that job, which is probably why I was quite good at it and, you know, progressing up pretty quickly. So yeah, I think all of those sensitivities are just developed as you go in a way. But yeah, had I been doing this kind of work from the beginning, who knows where I'd be now? I might be even more opened up. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Ron, have you got any more that you want to go down?
In terms of
Joanna's book, or what we're talking about with the heart tech, or the how she works with clients?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm a bit curious of, you know, getting a better sense of heart technology. Your practice now is focused on teaching that and creating fulfillment for other people.
Yeah. I mean, I think we are really desensitized from so much that goes on within ourselves. And it is partly based on being in a very mind-focused society, you know, that is driven by all of those things that I said that we were evolving out of before. And so when you start to get people anchoring in their heart space more often, and that can be as simple as just actually putting your attention there is the first step, or even putting a hand there, because our hand is connected to our actual physical heart muscle as well, you know, putting that there and just having that intention to connect into the heart actually is the immediate switch that you just need to start that process of bringing yourself from here to here. And then you can layer that up with the heart coherence technique, which is basically doing both of those things. But then when you're sitting here with your attention, you start to consciously foster uplifting or positive memories or thoughts or people or animals or whatever, something to foster those feelings within you. And then when you're doing a slow breathing, which calms the nervous system and makes the whole system feel safe, then you start to sync this with this, and you get into a more what they call the heart coherent state. And it just means that the heart rate variability is much more consistent, because we do naturally, actually, it's not just, you know, as you would see on the TV, like the one heart rate, that's the one thing. We actually go through quite a lot of variability. That's a bit of a misnomer. It's like, you know, what they say in the movies, really, but that's not really how the heart rate is. It's very variable depending on what's going on, what state of stress we're in, what we're experiencing day to day. But when we start to bring ourselves into coherence, they've noticed incredibly positive effects through our physiology. And when we're in harmony in our physiology and all that kind of stuff, it obviously reduces stress in the system, and it gives us access into less noise going on within our system, so we can tune into ourselves in a deeper way. So, you know, that's like the beginning of how I work with it. And the thing is, the more you do it, the more entrained into your heart energy you get. It's like a cumulative effect. So, you know, if you have only just done it once, then you're probably not going to feel a significant benefit. But when you're doing it every day, and it doesn't have to take a half an hour meditation, which I love, it can take 5 minutes, you know, that's a big difference, because I'm in a real favor of being able to have little bite-sized chunks that we can do that add up to amazing visceral change within our reality, rather than long and involved processes that nobody really wants to do, that, you know, you're dragging yourself through them. So, but the cumulative effect is people really start tuning into that heart area more. And, you know, it has all these incredible capabilities and wisdom. So when we're accessing that, we're naturally more in line with who we're going to be. We're more in line with who we are, where we're going. You know, this is where all of the intelligence is coming from, literally within our system, and filtering out the rest of our being. So that's why it's so powerful, you know, and it, yeah, just has, I mean, I could go on and on and on for hours, but really, because it's got all these amazing effects. But that's the short version. I hope that gives you a little bit more of a, like, how it's sort of, why it works and things, I guess. It's really fascinating. And then when you start getting into the visionary side of it and the alchemy side of it, it's pretty interesting where you can take it. So, but I'm also sort of waiting for the next level of it to come through, really. But, you know, there's certain ways that the heart communicates that really allow us to understand more about how it works. You know, it's really different from how this works. And so those kind of pillars that I teach people help people sort of understand when they're in communication with their heart and when they're not. And it helps them be in this space more often than not, or bring themselves back to that space.
Right. So I'll ask you even a deeper question as it relates, right? So do you believe that we're all born with the heart being the, you know, the guiding sort of mechanism in our body, right?
Yes.
Do you believe that? So if that's the case, then that natural experience has been suppressed by society and upbringing and all those influences, so to speak, that come into play. And then the idea is to teach you how to reconnect to a more natural state of being, right? And what we're designed to exist as, right?
Yes.
And function as. So if that's the case, right? Then do people automatically gravitate towards it? Some do, I guess, and some don't. They have to be pulled back into that natural state and see some benefit.
Yeah, I mean, are you talking in terms of, like, people in general being interested in this work now?
Yeah, like your clients that you would seek out, for example, right? Or that would seek you out. Are they naturally drawn to it, or is something that they have to be convinced more that this is the way it is? Because it's a very new and interesting, right, perspective.
Yeah, I mean, people come to me for change. They are
Fair enough.
They are living with one state of themselves, and they probably are aware of certain patterns and behaviors and habits that they probably want to move on from, and they don't know how to do it. So usually people come to me for things, or they may be experiencing old trauma, they may be not living in, they want to find their purpose, they might be feeling disconnected from everything and everyone, and they may be feeling emotionally really out of kilter, you know. But people come to me when they want change. So they want to generally move out of one state of being and into a different one, and a new state of being. And, you know, it's really a new version of themselves. So that's generally what people
Got
come
it.
to me for. And I can just help break through the patterns and things. I'm an expert. I got multiple t-shirts and all of the patterns and the loops and the triggers and the whatever else. So, you know, that's what they come to me for. It's not, you know, at the moment I've just launched really heart technology as a thing. It's very, very new. It's not, my course isn't even online yet, but I've just started teaching about it. And so far, people are really attracted to it. They're really fascinated by what this is and the meaning of it. And most recently, I presented a workshop on it over the new year at a wellness consciousness festival. And, you know, there was a guy who came in partway who, I mean, I was taking them through some of the heart technology activations and showing the various ways that you could use it. And he was just bawling his eyes out, crying. This older, very rough looking guy who, you know, and he just sort of came to me at the end and he said, that was what I've been searching for the whole festival. It had such a impact on him at that time. So, you know, people are definitely attracted to find more about it because they're just sort of interested, but it's not something, I'm only just starting to promote it as, the foundation of my work really, because although I'd been using it, I was sort of still making sense of all of the different ways that it worked in order to be able to teach it further. Yeah.
Yes. Riccardo, what I got out of that is you're fine. And I need to bring several binders and notebooks over to have a review of what I need to go through in a transitional period. That's what I got out of that.
We'll make sure the cameras are there for that, Ron.
It'll be a long podcast.
Yeah. Now, Joe, I mean, you had that self-discovery, and you've done the journey, and you've discovered the heart technology and these different things of being and connecting with yourself. That's fine. You could have kept that to yourself and just carried on doing other things and had that improve the you. So I guess the question is, why? Why are you teaching it to other people? What was the trigger for you to go, I need to spread this?
You know, I feel like I was so lost and really not where I wanted to be that I am so compassionate for others who are in that space. And, you know, I really wanted to help other people avoid that. So the book helps people do that, see through some of the bits and pieces and the pitfalls. And then my client work does it as well. But I'm just really passionate about helping us evolve as a society to a different way of being. I mean, we can't go on how we have been, can we? I mean, I think everyone's pretty aware of that right now. And I find this period that we're all experiencing right now, I know it's incredibly challenging, but it is also incredibly transformative. And I really do believe that we're going to come out the other side of this, and it may take a little while, but you know, really paying more attention to what is more important in life. What is, you know, the deepest truth that we have in ourselves, our wisdom, what we want to be connected to, not what we've been told, not what, you know, is the societal version of what life should look like, but really being, you know, respectful of ourselves and all of this, and our own heart and heart technology and nature and this planet around us, you know, all of it. We're all connected, we're all working through it together, and we're all really, really important pieces of the puzzle. And when we bring ourselves online in our most magnificent capacity and tuning into that genius or blueprint within, then we are, you know, that is an amplification effect out into the rest of everybody else. And that's just helping that transition take place. So that's why I'm incredibly passionate about what I'm doing here, because I see the bigger picture in it all, really, you know. And yeah, I feel very instrumental in the work I'm doing to help. And I'm sure as I progress on this journey, it's going to get to as many people as need it, and that, you know, it'll just be the beginning of a way to really help people on a fundamental level and on a mass global level shift and change and transform.
I never really spent much time analyzing it. Is probably the awakening that you sensed, because, you know, when you, let me say it like this, the only way I know how to say it, when you're living your life every day and that's just who you are and that's how you go through it, it doesn't seem abnormal to you, right? We used to call it gut or intuition. Some people call it the Holy Spirit, whatever they call that. To me, it's that little voice inside that says, go left instead of right, you know? And at least that's how I've kind of processed it through what we talked about tonight and how I've lived my life. And maybe coming from where I come from, which is, you know, always involved with creators and creativity, and same as you, Joanna, you know, in that space, it forces you to kind of take away some of the cerebral direction and start to look at some of the things that, you know, are a little bit less about touch and feel and actuality, and start to create concepts and ideas and creative instances and things to be able to, you know, take it forward. I'll give you an example. You know, I happen to, and again, I don't believe there's any coincidence, right? And maybe this goes on the podcast since we're rolling still, who knows what we end up doing. But I ran into a guy the other day, and he's kind of a rough and tumble kind of guy, you know, he looks a lot like Riccardo. No, I'm just kidding. But, you know, he painted some of Da Vinci's sketches by hand, right? And he's just a guy that I ran into, right? But he literally hand painted and brought to life some of Da Vinci's line art drawings that have never been painted, right? Or at least have never been painted by Da Vinci, let's put it that way. And so those kind of simple connections and watching people like that who are living that authentic life, because well, I shouldn't say no, very few artists get rich in their current life, right? Those people were considered lunatics and all these other things, and were paid, you know, nothing, if anything, to create works, right? So that's that kind of heart connection that all of us on this call have been a part of in our careers, and a part of being our day-to-day involved with. So it may seem far more natural to not only myself, but us, than it does to people looking in from the outside that don't live like that, right? Particularly scientists and, you know, engineers and persons that have to rely on that kind of classic training for their existence. Corporate America tends to strip some of that away because there are processes and rules, and Riccardo, you can't make more than Joanna because you're at a different title than her, whether your contributions are greater and all that kind of stuff that I never really, I certainly employed and adhered to and actually enforced, but I didn't know that I've ever really understood that, because if the head of sales is generating more money than the CEO, you should pay that head of sales more money so they don't go anywhere. Or otherwise the CEO lives differently. And that's not how typical corporate structures are in it. And that's kind of that lack of, you know, in a very different lens, again, Joanna, that's kind of the interesting thing between, you know, practicality and reality, right? And not. So yeah. The correlation can run across all those different things in life, be it, you know, how we walk personally and how we walk professionally and all those things. And you watch people's different behaviors, right? And how they act. You can almost correlate it to people who are maybe unknowingly in tune with heart technology or not, you know, and those who aren't.
Yeah, for sure.
You go on and on. It's a big rabbit hole to me.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot of different avenues down this rabbit hole as well. Yeah, I mean, it is interesting because your point about the art, like I remember at school a distinct point when I was having to decide what to do at university, and I had been doing arts and English, and I was never great at science or maths and stuff, but I was sort of choosing between, do I go to art school or do I do a business degree? And I, for some reason, didn't think I could make it as an artist because of all the reasons that you stated before, you know, and I thought you had to have this special genius to even like remotely make it as an artist or to make your way in the world and be able to support yourself. And so I chose business because I thought, I don't like, my dreams obviously just weren't big enough to be able to hold that. And so it's really funny that you brought up that example because, you know, that probably is what my heart wanted to do at the time, but I didn't do it. I did the thing that was the more logical, you know, way of addressing it. Yeah.
And the most interesting thing too about at least taking us back to the gentleman that I met, right? And this is another one of his works. And this is oil on canvas. It's not, you can't get the true, you can never get real true art through, unless you're in front of it, right? But you know, physically in front of it. But long story short, you know, I'll open up another rabbit hole for 5 seconds. But when we talk about judgment, right? The first thing I did was judge the guy. And I pride myself on not being judgmental because of the way he appeared, because of his previous history, what he did in the past and all this. When he said, hey, you know, I do artwork, I'm thinking, oh God, right? This is going to be a disaster, right? Just like if somebody says, hey, I've got a demo tape for you, you're like, oh God, you know, I've been listening to professional musicians my whole life, and some of them are really bad. I can't only imagine what somebody who's not classically trained may sound like, right? And come to find out, you know, you're completely 180 degrees wrong, right? That you pass judgment on somebody that has all this talent that's not classically trained, just like non-classically trained musicians, Riccardo, that you and I have run into 1,000 times, right? That you go, gosh, you know, they're better than people that have studied it their whole life because they have that gift, right? And sometimes you're either born with it or you're not. And, you know, my question kind of starts to run with, where does the heart connect that and then bring that purpose into focus? Right, so that you can recognize and then share that purpose with the rest of the world, whatever that is. Art is just the
because
thing.
I do believe that those artists like Da Vinci and all of those guys, they were using their heart technology because that is access to the infinite potential and wisdom of the universe. All of the ideas are there, and that's why it's so powerful to connect through here, because it allows our connection to source that encapsulates the full potential of everything, right? And so they just literally were tuning in and then siphoning through all of that inspiration to be able to bring it forth into their paintings. And that was absolutely what they were doing, is connecting to their heart technology 100%. And, you know, that I think, you know, we've just been like, people do it on and off, and some people do it more than others, or not, or what, you know. And they're definitely those people who are way more logical, like you were talking about before, like the scientists and maybe, you know, whoever else, accounting probably and things like that. But
what, lawyers?
Yeah, I was going to say lawyers, but then lawyers often end up in advertising as strategic creatives, because they do have that kind of way of being able to work with their brain in a different kind of way. Because, you know, there's also something about the way that the brain works that's related to that heart, because it is illogical and irrational and, you know, all of those kinds of things. It works in pictures and images and doesn't make sense with a logical way at all. It's the complete opposite. So
right,
so it's really fascinating to think about. But I literally, I don't think this is a brand new technology. I think it's a technology that we haven't been consciously accessing, and so when we consciously start to do that, it blows it open even more, and we start to really see the power of it, basically, rather than it being a sort of like, oh, occasionally in and out or whatever, you know, kind of scenario.
And even though Marnie faded in the background and stirred us up now, so she's getting some good podcast footage, you know, and I think she did that on purpose, obviously. But you know, one of the things that comes from it is, and I know the answer to this. I think I know. I'll let you answer it. Do people know, or they don't? Do they know their genius? Do they know their connection or not? And maybe that is indeed, Joanna, what you're trying to accomplish, is make people connect with that, so that they don't end up living what they think is their purpose instead of what really is their purpose, right? That's a very different place.
Exactly. And the interesting thing is also, if you think about the way we've been set up in society, we tend, like, often, you know, some geniuses are hailed, yes, but it's that sort of tear down sort of scenario that we live in, like, oh no, you can't be too amazing and too big and then you get attacked, and then all that, you know, like, it's a very funny way that we don't support everyone being a genius, when really we are all geniuses. It's just, you know, we need to uncover it and remember that within ourselves. So that's what I do in my work, right? I'm helping people, you know, access that genius within them, access that individual blueprint that is completely different from anybody else on the planet. And when they become that, you know, then they're empowered in the world. And that's the difference. I mean, if we're all online living our genius, this would be a bloody amazing place to live.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and I should give credit to this quote. I think I've used it on the pod before, Riccardo, but you know, the graveyard is certainly the most wealthy place on the planet, right? Because it's all that genius that never got exploited. It's all that, you know, creativity that never got showcased. It's all that stuff that ends up there because of, Joanna, some of the things you're describing, whether it be, again, you know, outside pressures, whatever those are that prevent us, or our own insecurity that prevent us from saying, I don't really care what anybody else thinks. This is who I am, and this is the authentic me, and I'm going to go do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So those two voices on either shoulder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it takes courage to go and really, you know, live your authentic self. I mean, I was pretty terrified writing that book and exposing all my deepest, darkest secrets in my comedy of errors journey of personal evolution. I was like, are people going to really like just make fun of me? But people really relate. They absolutely relate. Because why? Because, you know, I wrote it from the heart. I was literally accessing my heart technology, writing it. And, you know, I think there's a big part in that, but, you know, it doesn't make it any less terrifying. When I launched it, I was like, oh no, I don't want to do this. I want to take it back.
And I put somebody else's name on it.
Yeah, seriously. I was like, oh God, all these people are going to know all these terrible things about me. Oh, why was I so honest? But, you know, and the feedback, it's people connect with the relatability, and that is the authenticity coming through, as you say. And, you know, I think that is when we start to really bring the power of our potential online. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. When you released the book, did you have to say, Mum, Dad, you're not allowed to read it?
Well, so so my mum had a meltdown. There's a lot of her in the book. And, you know, she's my most challenging relationship. And, you know, but my dad, he had passed on. Not thankfully, but thankfully, because I can't imagine I would have maybe launched this book, because, you know, I probably wouldn't have been able to put it out there if he'd been still with us today. I just don't know if I could have done it, to be honest, because it's pretty revealing. And, you know, he would have read it. He wouldn't have not read it. So I wouldn't have done it. So, yeah, but yeah.
Well, he'll get you back in the next life.
I'm pretty sure he's been very supportive of what's going on with this book. You know, I think, yeah, where he's at, none of it really matters. And he's probably just, yeah, helping usher it along.
There you go.
Quality. Good stuff. All right. If you want to check the book out, that's it there. It is called The Inside Hustle, Joanna Walden. Joanna, what's next? What's the next project?
Well, I mean, I really want to sell this book as a series because I think it would be amazing. And it would also help, you know, it gets the message to people in another ways. I mean, I'm recording the audiobook right now, which is how I met you, Riccardo, which is amazing. And, you know, I'm just increasing my programs and my ways to work with people. And I'm really just stepping out even more in a bigger way this year, especially. So I'm just going to continue expanding, and obviously waiting for heart technology level 2, level up on that, because I'm pretty sure I'm just scratching the surface with the things I'm discovering about it. And I find that really exciting. So all of these different bits and pieces sort of where I'm going with this, but it's very much kind of found my lane, and I'm sticking in it and I'm expanding it from here.
And how do people sign up? How do we get in touch with you?
So you can catch me at my website, which is joannawalden.com. There's information about my current courses and the ways that you can work with me there. You can find the book on Amazon as a paper book and an ebook. Soon it will be available as an audiobook as well. It's just in production right now. So yeah, those are all the main ways. It's on most of the platforms, to be honest. I'm not going to name all of them, but it's on a ton of platforms. If you Google it, you'll find it.
Yeah, good stuff, man. Hey, Joanna, thanks for giving us some time today and coming on the pod with Ron and I and sharing your experiences and talking about this puppy as well, the Inside Hustle. It's well worth the read. I'm about halfway through it. Ron, I sent you the PDF, so you can make sure you finish that as well, because Joanna's got plenty of passions. One of them's Brazilians. I'll give you that much. But you can find out more about that and if you read the book. Hey, Joanna.
That's
Very,
awesome.
very true. Thank you, Riccardo, for that amazing finish. Yeah, it's a very irreverent personal journey of evolution. So I assure you, you will have many laughs, you will learn something, you'll find it inspiring, and it will also get you, if you're not able to travel right now like everybody, it takes you around the world. So it's pretty fun read. So get into it.
Yeah,
That's
fantastic. Thanks very much, Joanna.
Thanks,
Cool.
Joanna.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Great,
And
thank you.
best of luck with book 2 and the TV Netflix series as well, eh?
Yeah, I know.
Go. Thanks, Joanna.
Cool. Thank you, Joanna.
Bye.
See you later, mate. Bye-bye.